Today I thought I would talk about the painting process and some things that I've been thinking about in my own painting process. I have just finished 5 paintings, 3 acrylic paintings on paper and 2 paintings on wooden boards. I have been working on these paintings for weeks. I started them weeks and weeks ago, and I've just been coming back to them, adding a little bit of detail, living with them, and now eventually I'm declaring them finished. 2 sets of paintings that I've been working on in tandem, and they all came to completion this week. Once I finished a set of paintings, I like to spend a little bit of time in my notebook and really just quantify, write down any of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of the process, my mindset, what I've learnt in the painting of these paintings, things that I'd like my future self to remember. And I find it a really helpful exercise. So I was writing in my notebook this morning, and then I suddenly thought, actually, do you know what? Some of the things that I'm wanting myself to remember might be helpful for you in your own art practice. So I just thought I'd share some of the thoughts about the art making process. First thing I've written in my notebook: be braver, take risks, and sometimes they lead to rewards. Don't control everything. Invite in the unexpected and the unpredictable. And the reason that I've written this is because on all 5 paintings, halfway through the painting, I introduced something unexpected and the paintings took a different turn. The way I like to paint is I like to build up layer after layer after layer of acrylic paint. When I start a painting, I don't know where it's going to go. So I might have the vaguest of ideas. I might look through my sketchbook and there might be a shape or a composition or something or a feeling. But that's all I have when I start painting. I really want to kind of build up paint and let the painting evolve and unfurl without being really prescriptive from the get-go as to where the painting's going to lead. It's a little bit like I'm setting off on a journey with no map and no idea where I'm going. And I like to paint that way. Other people may hate painting that way. It's really important that we find the processes, our own ways of painting and creating that allow us to enjoy the process, or if not enjoy the process, find the process rewarding, and secondly, deliver the results that we like. So I really enjoy my paintings when they've got a hidden history, where there's kind of buried treasure, where there are moments underneath that they feel like they have a history, that they're an object that has something going on underneath. That is what I enjoy in my paintings. So therefore, my painting process reflects that. For me, I really want to love and be excited by what I'm doing in a painting. And all of these paintings, I got to a kind of middle stage and I wasn't loving what I was doing and I wasn't excited by what was on the page or the board. And when I get to that point, I always have a slight confidence crisis. And usually my default is to play safely and to add in like little detail and little marks. But actually what I often need to do is the opposite, is to bring in a bit of risk, a bit of the unexpected, a bit of the uncontrolled. So in all of these paintings, when I was at that middle stage where I was feeling a bit unsteady and unsure, I sort of reverted to my default of like tiny little hands. But then I gave myself a bit of a talking to and said, no, you need to introduce something bolder, something braver, something unexpected. And so in all of these paintings, I added in something. So for example, in this painting here, this painting was like a kind of light green, pale pink, and I just wasn't feeling excited by it. So midway through, I got out some pink and blue paint and I just squirted it right across the painting surface and then scraped it across with a scraper. And that kind of bold, gestural approach, it just kind of unlocked something in me or something in the painting, and from there I was able to get excited again. Adding in something unpredictable and unexpected can take all sorts of different forms. So it could be a completely different colour. It could be using a different tool, you know, using a massive big scraper or a sponge, or dripping something in, or using a bottle to spray paint onto the canvas. It could be just looking at what you've got on your painting and saying, what is the opposite of that? What is completely different from something I've got on this painting? How can I just add in something unpredictable? It could be using your fingers. There are lots of different ways to do it, but I often find that if I'm in that stuck moment, then sometimes I really just have to shake things up. Some more notes that I think link to this. Don't be too precious. It's only paint. I have to remember that sometimes if things are not quite working, introduce something different. Introduce something bold and brave and unexpected and uncontrolled, and see what happens. And it could work brilliantly. It could be a disaster, but unless we try, we don't know. And particularly with acrylic paint, you can paint over what you've done. So nothing is too precious. And I was in the middle of all of these paintings. I feel myself getting to a slightly precious and pernickety and tight, because I'd spent days on the paintings and they weren't going where I wanted them to go. So I had to be willing to risk. That's it, risk. Introducing risk. I think that's it. Being willing to introduce risk into the painting. Maybe what I introduced wouldn't work, but actually what it did is it brought a boldness and an excitement and a reward. So I think there is something about the bigger the risk, the bigger the potential reward. Mistakes and wrong turns often contain gifts. I'm getting very philosophical today. Mistakes often contain gifts. I think there is something about the painting process that the more I've had a bit of a tussle, the more I've had a bit of a challenge, the more problems I've had to solve within a painting, the more rewarding I find a positive end result. It's like if it's so easy and it's super, super easy all the way along, then I don't feel as attached to the painting. So there's something for me that actually a little bit of struggle in a painting often means I prefer the end result. What else have I written? The grit in the oyster creates the pearl. The struggle is part of the joy and part of the reward. Painting is a roller coaster, enjoy the journey. And I do want to enjoy painting, and that doesn't mean that it's always super simple and super easy and delightful. I think for me, I actually enjoy the problem solving and a bit of the difficulty and a bit of the wrestling and a bit of the trying to work it out and a bit of trying to take something that doesn't look good and turn it into something that I find visually exciting and pleasing or beautiful. Okay, my last thing is more collage. More collage embedded within paintings. So these paintings on board, I stuck in bits of painted collage that I have now painted over. They're kind of embedded in the paint now. You can not really see them. Just maybe tiny little moments are peeping through. And so that's more of a practical thing that I want to do. I glued some previous bits of painting. Some of these paintings down here, actually, I cut them up and glued them into the painting to begin. And actually that was quite an interesting starting point. Gave me a really interesting kind of rich texture and surface. So that's just a kind of practical point that I want to remember. I think it's a really useful idea to gather your thoughts in writing when you have created something, and just to write down some of the things that you'd like to remember. Sometimes in the middle of the painting process, I have these moments of challenge and difficulty, and it's really useful for me to remember that actually those are the things that make painting rewarding. You know, the difficult bits and the challenging bits are actually, and overcoming them and working through them, and knowing that the painting process is not always a smooth, easy line. You know, actually sometimes there are moments of doubt or moments of low confidence, but I kind of keep going and working through and thinking, how can I improve this painting? How can I change this painting, and I need to remember about risk and reward and being bold and being brave and not being too precious. Sometimes introducing the unexpected and the surprising as a way to unlock something new, as a way to create something interesting. So, sometimes I might smear paint with my fingers, or I might get something straight from the tube, or I might spray something unpredictable and see what happens. It might work beautifully and it might be a complete mess. And that is part of the painting process, isn't it? Embracing that risk and hoping that there might be a reward at the end.
I'm hushing the dog on the chain. I'm running up stones on the edge of the bank. Rally the troops for another refrain. I sing this softly to myself. I sing this softly